Okay, good afternoon students. Today we will be concentrating on the last part of this human reproduction, that is female reproductive system. Okay, the last class we were discussing about menstrual cycle, gametogenesis. In gametogenesis we studied what is spermatogenesis, structure of sperm cells. Whenever you study, you first study male reproductive system, and after that you study spermatogenesis, then study structure of sperm. Then you study female reproductive system, then oogenesis, then structure of ovum. Then afterwards you study fertilization, implantation, maintenance of pregnancy, and so on. Okay, right. So now the last part of this in your human reproductive system is the female reproductive system. Now when you talk about the female reproductive system, we are going to talk about some various parts in it. So first we are going to talk about the ovaries. The second one we are talking about the fallopian tube. And the third one is the uterus. Okay, along with that we are going to study some glands that is situated inside the female reproductive system. Okay. Now, when we talk about the female reproductive system, the ovaries are the primary sex organ in female. Ovaries. Okay, right. So now, especially when you talk about the ovary, we already studied what is happening inside the ovary and all. Inside the ovary, we have two things. One is the development of the follicles. That means we study primary follicle will get converted into secondary follicles, then tertiary follicle. At the same time, the tertiary follicle will convert it into a matured graphene follicles. So this is what the development of the follicles that is taking place inside this ovaries. Simultaneously, when the follicles are developed, the oocyte is also undergoing development. That is, the primary oocyte will be getting converted into secondary oocyte. So all this primary follicle and the secondary follicles will have the primary oocyte, and the tertiary follicle as well as the graphene follicle will have the secondary oocytes. Okay. So these two things are happening within the ovaries. That is the development of the follicles and the oocytes. Now, so that is what in female reproductive system we are concentrating this ovary as well as the structure of ovaries. Now, this ovary will be surrounded inside by a layer called, already we know, that is called the germinal epithelial cells. The germinal epithelium cells will be located on the cortex part of the ovary. So, ovary will have cortex and medulla. The outer part is called the cortex and the inner part is called the medulla, and we still studied what the medulla will have. The medulla will have the blood vessels. This is the medulla. So now this medulla will have all the connective tissue will be there. Connective tissue will be presented in the medulla, as well as some blood vessel will be there, some lymphatic vessels will be there, as well as some nervous system, nerve endings or nerves will be there inside this medulla. Okay, right. So now inside the ovary we have the development of follicle, at the same time oocyte development will take place. Second, the ovary will be surrounded by the germinal epithelial cells, and this germinal epithelial cell will be enclosing. Enclosing is covering inside. You will have the stroma cells, or otherwise it is called as ovarian stroma. So here the germinal epithelial cells will be covering, or it will be enclosing this ovarian stroma. Okay, that means ovarian stroma is there. Above that you will have the germinal epithelium. This stroma only forms outer cortex, and inner it forms the medulla. So stroma, outer cortex and inner medulla. Now in between, that is below this germinal epithelium, you will have one more layer called tunica albugina. So this is a membrane which is located just below this ovaries. Okay. So what are the structures covering up the ovary is the germinal epithelium, and this germinal epithelium will be enclosing this ovarian stroma. Stroma you will have outer cortex and inner medulla. Cortex only you will find this follicle development, oocyte development, everything takes place inside the cortex. And in medulla we studied it is having some connective tissue, blood vessel will be there, some lymphatic vessels will be there, some nerves will be present. Okay, right. So now below this ovarian stroma you will have the tunica albuginea. Okay, right. So now where this ovary is located, the location of this ovary, it is in the abdomen, inside the abdominal cavity. But whereas when you talk about the testes are not inside the abdominal cavity, it is present outside the abdominal cavity. So female ovary is inside. That why it is present outside the abdominal cavity testis? Because for sperm production, temperature is highly important. So varying temperature is important. But for the egg production, for the ovum production, no need of varying temperature. Okay, so temperature is not going to influence that, so that it is kept inside the abdominal cavity. In some book you will find the ovaries are presented in the pelvic area or the pelvic region. Is that clear? Right. So it is situated, it is located inside the abdominal cavity or in the pelvic area, and it is surrounded by germinal epithelium that enclosing the ovarian stroma, which is having cortex and medulla. Cortex, you know, development of follicles will take place. At the same time, oocyte development is taking place. Second one, medulla will have some connective tissue, blood vessel, lymphatic vessels will be there. Below this, you will have the tunica albuginea. Understand? Right. So now, this size of the ovary is 2 to 4 centimeter long. That is the size of the ovary. Same that we studied when we studied the seminiferal tubules. Inside the lobules, 2 to 4 highly coiled seminiferal tubules are located. Is that clear? This much? Right. So this is one part of it. Second, we will study about this tube called fallopian tube. So ovary, any doubt in this ovary? Right. Where the ovary is situated? Inside the abdominal cavity. What is the size of it? 2 to 4 centimeter long. Right. What is the cover which is enclosed the ovarian stroma? That is called germinal epithelium. Okay. Then next, this ovarian stroma will divide into outer cortex and inner medulla. The cortex will have development of the follicles and the developing oocytes. Okay. The oocytes will primary and secondary oocytes. Then you will have this cortex will have follicle development and oocyte. Medulla will have all this connective tissue, blood vessel, lymphatic vessel and everything. And this below this germinal epithelium you will have tunica albuginea. This much clear? Right. So second one is the fallopian tube. Now this ovary will always releases the egg or in the form of secondary oocyte. This is what the egg ovum is. After it is getting matured, the Graafian follicle will undergo rupture, so that what is happening inside is drawn here. Okay, so the Graafian follicle ruptures and the egg is released, oocyte. Now, this is happening during the process called ovulation process, and that too on the 14th day. That is what we studied. On the 14th day it is taking place. Now, this ovum which is liberated from the ovary will enter into this beginning of the fallopian tube. So this beginning of the fallopian tube is called fimbriae. Okay. So that is an important structure which is a finger-like structure called fimbriae. Okay. So it is a finger-like structure. So now the role of this fimbriae is to collect the ovum when it is released from the ovary. Understand? So now two things that we will talk about this fallopian tube. The first part of the fallopian tube which is having a finger-like structure is called fimbriae. The role of this fimbriae is to collect the egg. When the ovary releases, the egg will be collected and it is taken into this tube. Okay. Now this fallopian tube is extending from upper part or outer part of the ovary. So we call it as peripheral So where it is extended between the peripheral layers or periphery of the ovary, and it will end up to the uterus. See, it is beginning here, starting here, and it is ending in the uterus. So in between you will have this one. Okay, so fallopian tube, the beginning part is in the periphery of the ovary and ends in the uterus. Is that clear? Right. Now, see, this ovary will be attached to the uterus wall, outer wall. Uterus is there, ovary is attached. So it is attached to the uterus, and this is all the abdomen because it is present in the abdominal cavity. So this is inside every area is an abdomen. So this ovary will be attached to this abdomen cavity or abdomen wall. At the same time, it is attached to the uterus wall by a structure called mesovarium. It's an important structure. Mesovarium is a connective tissue which is attaching this ovary to the abdominal cavity as well as to the uterus wall. Understand? Right. So now you know what is the role of fimbriae. It is a finger-like projection which is receiving the ovum at the time of ovulation or collects the ovum. Okay. As soon as the ovum goes, we already studied, the ovum remains in this wider part. This is called the ampulla. The structure which is above, it is called the ampulla, and the ovum will be remaining there for 24 hours before fertilization. Okay, if it is not fertilization, it will go for menstrual cycle. If it is getting fertilized, it will be undergoing full pregnancy period, 280 days. That is what we studied, right? So now this ampulla is a wider part where the egg will come and remain there, and this part is helpful for fertilization. So fertilization will always take place inside the ampulla of the fallopian tube, and this is the tube which is very narrow, which is fixed together. So now the hormone called progesterone hormone influences this so that it opens and the egg will be coming to the uterus. That is what. Now here this end part or closer to the uterus is called isthmus. Okay. So these are all the parts that we have studied in the fallopian tube. Number one is called fimbriae, second one is called ampulla, and the third one is called isthmus. Okay, so these are all about the fallopian tube. And the second one is the uterus. Last one, third one is the uterus. Now, when you talk about the uterus is always hollow, holes in it, cavity in it, hollow chamber. It is filled with the muscles. Everywhere it is muscle will be filled. Understand what is the nature of the uterus? Hollow. Hollow means it is having a cavity. So now here we are talking about the uterus. I'll just write it down so that you can remember the points. Okay. So this is the structure, location and the size of the structure of the ovary. Second, we talked about the fallopian tube, which is I have written there. The third one is the uterus. Now, what is the nature of the uterus? The uterus are hollow. That means having a cavity in it, and it is filled with muscles. So it is a muscular organ. Understand? And the uterus, the top, it is a main part of the uterus is also called as the body of the uterus. This is a main part. So the main part of the uterus is called as the body. Okay, so this is where the child is getting developed, body. And just superior to this, above this body, it is called the fundus. Fundus is a superior to the body. Understand? Right. So it is inverted P shape. P, if you have, it is inverted. Understand? Right. Now, very important, another 2-mark question. The layers which is located inside the uterus. See, this layer is the first layer. Okay, so from the beginning we will talk like this, outer, then we will talk about the middle and the inner layers. Okay, right. So now we will talk about the layer which is the first layer, which is called the outer layer. The outer layer is called as perimetrium. Perimetrium. Okay, peri means outside. Metrium is a layer. The layer which is present outside the uterus are called perimetrium. Okay, and this layer is a serous layer. Serous in the sense it is has the capacity of producing some fluid in it. Okay, so that layer is called serous layer. Then the layer which is in the middle, it is called myometrium, and this layer is muscular layer. And this layer will always undergo strong contraction at the time of child delivery, parturition. Okay, the outer membrane is called perimetrium, serous layer, that in the sense it can give a kind of fluid out. Second membrane, middle, called myometrium. It is a muscular in nature, and that muscular movement will undergo strong contraction at the time of parturition. Parturition is a childbirth. And the last one, end one, is called endometrium. Inside, that is called endometrium. So we have perimetrium, then we have myometrium, then we have the endometrium. All this. Okay. Now, this endometrium is glandular in nature. Gland producing means some kind of secretions will be produced there, glandular. And among this, the endometrium will undergo cyclic changes during every menstrual cycle. Okay, because egg comes and fixed on the wall of the endometrium, during menstrual cycle the endometrium is removed and again it is regenerated. Okay, so these are all the layers which is present in the uterus. Understand? So far we have studied about the ovary, fallopian tube, uterus, those parts that we have completed. Then we will study about this glands and some external genitalia. All these are internal genitalia, that means it is present inside. Now we are going to talk about glands as well as some external genitalia. External genitalia means the outer part of the reproductive tract that we will be discussing. Is that clear? Right. So the next one we will concentrate on the external genitalia. That means up to the uterus that we are focused. Now we are going to study about this area which is the external part of the, up to this it is inside the body. Now this is the external part, what is there outside the body. So that is called external genitalia, or otherwise called as vulva. Okay, and here we are going to talk about the vagina, the cervix and all this. So these things that we are going to study. Okay, now this cervix is the upper part and vagina here. This forms a long muscular tube which is extending to the exterior, which comes out. Vagina as well as the cervix, here the cervix and vagina will start from this area and will be extending outwards towards the exterior. Okay, right. Now this entire part, what is that I will explain it here. Now this vagina will have the outer part like this, opening. This opening is called the upper opening, or otherwise called as urethral opening. Okay, so urethral opening. So female will have two openings. One is for the excretion of urine separately, and the another opening is for the vaginal copulatory organ for reproduction. So they have two openings. But male, only one organ, one tube which excrete both sperm cells as well as the urine. But female, opening will be different. Two openings will be there. One opening for urethra for urinary excretions, and another opening for the copulatory organ. Okay. So this one, the upper part is also called as the urethral opening, or otherwise called as the upper opening. One more opening is present below here. So this opening is called the vaginal opening. This the vaginal opening. Okay, so this is the two opening. One is on the top part, that is called the vaginal opening, and another one is, below part is the vaginal opening, and the top part is the upper opening. Okay, right. So now here in this area, the opening where the upper part here we will talk about a structure called Clydorus. It is on the tip top of this upper opening. Now this do not have any function at all. Clydorus, there is no particular function is fixed. Okay, right. So now this tube, cervix and vagina together called as birth canal. Okay, cervix and vagina together it is called birth canal. The first part is the cervix and the outer part is the vagina. Now this upper there, this part, if you talk, the top one will be the upper opening, urethral opening, and the below one is the vaginal opening. Understand? Right. So now here, the top upper urethral opening, that means this is the urethra opening. Below this urethral opening, you will find two glands will be present. These glands are called Skene's gland. Okay, where it is present? It is present on the lower opening of the urethra. Okay, so where the Skene's gland is present? Lower opening of the urethra, on both the sides it is. The role of the Skene's gland will produce a substances for lubrication. It produces a kind of a liquid, a fluid for lubrication purpose. And this gland is very much similar, or it is otherwise called as homogeneous. Homogeneous means same as the gland which is present in the male called the, what are the glands that we concentrated in male? Seminal vesicle, Cowper's gland and prostate gland. And this is for the prostate gland. So in prostate gland in male and the female Skene's gland both does the similar function. Understand? That is why this gland, Skene's gland, which is located below the urethral opening on both the sides, will secrete the lubrication substances which is homogeneous to the prostate gland in male. Understand? Then you will find another two glands which is presented on posterior, this is anterior part, vaginal opening, posterior part. So here you will find on both sides, left and right side of the vaginal opening, this area is also called as vestibular area. This area is called as vestibular. This is the vaginal part, this is the urethral part, and this area is called vestibular. So here you will find vestibular substances, or otherwise called as a vaginal opening on both the sides it is present. This gland is called as Marcolin Glands. So two glands we talked, one is the Skene's gland, another one is called Marcolin gland. Okay, this Marcolin gland, where it is present? It is presented on the posterior part of the vaginal opening, or otherwise called as posterior part of the vestibular canal. Vestibular, this substance, posterior part. So here this gland, Marcolin gland, will secrete a substances called mucus, and this mucus also similarly it gives a lubrication. Understand? And this gland, Marcolin gland, will be homogeneous to the male gland, Cowper's gland, or otherwise Cowper gland is otherwise called as, Cowper's gland is also called as, what are the glands that we studied in male? Seminal vesicle, bulbo-urethral gland and prostate gland. So Cowper's gland is also called as bulbo-urethral gland. So the gland which is very much homogeneous, similar to the male and female is, here it is Bartholian and there is bulbo-urethral gland. Here Skene gland and prostate gland are similar. Understand? So now here this area, the vaginal opening here or the vestibular area will be surrounded by a smooth muscle. That means it is covered by always. So this is, I told you, it is a copulatory part. Copulatory organ is only for reproduction. Okay, and this is for only for the urinary opening. Okay, so reproduction or your menstrual discharge, everything happens here. Now, this part will be covered by a very thin kind of a muscle called hymen. Okay, the thin muscle is called hymen, and this is being checked for women's virginity, as well as it is being torn. It is torn or removed during first copulation. First reproduction time, this is being torn, so that it can helpful for the virgin testing of the virginity, but still we are not doing that. But this part which is getting opened, even in some unfertilized girl, I mean the girl who is not married, or still it is getting removed because of the exercises, and they may go for horse riding, bike riding. So all this, it may, because it's a very thin membrane, therefore there some girls do dances and all, so that time it has a chance of tearing. So it does not mean it should be there. Is it clear? So that is what this role of this hymen is. Only one particular word is given in your book, that all you concentrate. Understand, right? Now, the entire part will be surrounded by two layers. I draw like this because all my parts are included in this part. Okay, so this part is called labio minora. It's an inner layer. Labio minora. Then one more structure will be around, surrounding like this. And this part, outer, this is the inner part. Don't forget it. This is an inner part. And one more part which is surrounded outside, this is called labio majora or majora. Understand? So all these are very, very important structures in the external genitalia, that is called vulva. Here you will have the cervix and vagina. Both are called birth canals, and it is having two openings. Upper part is called urethral opening. Below one is called the vestibular, or otherwise called as vaginal opening. And this having two glands called Skene's gland. Vestibular will have two glands called Bartholin gland. Understand? And Clydorus will be on the top, and here you will have this labio minora inside, labio majora outside. The last part, end part, is a muscular part where it is not there in the book, but still you know, that is mons pubis, where the hair growth will be there in this area. Okay, so these are all the different parts in the female reproductive system, internal structures as well as external structure. Simultaneously we study the internal structure of the ovary also we study. Understand? Right. So next, after this we will be discussing about the development of mammary gland. With that, the entire second chapter will get concluded. Clear? Right. Another important 5-mark question, the last 5-mark question in this chapter. After this, two topics I will be taking only during a revision time. Okay, because you study the all, whatever we have taught, then not two topics, only the final topic is left over and some introduction part is there. If you study the whole thing, the introduction part, that you will understand. The last part is a parturition and lactation, book back question. First we will study interior and then we will concentrate the book back questions. Okay, the last part is the mammary gland. The mammary glands are the modified sweat gland. So that means there are numerous sweat glands are there in the body. The few or one or two sweat glands is being modified into mammary gland or milk producing gland. Okay, and this is present for both the sexes. That means for male as well as female, this mammary gland is there, but for male it is rudimentary. That means it is not doing any function. Okay, but female it is functional. Understand? So this is the modified sweat gland, and it is present in both the sexes, male and female. In male it is rudimentary, and female it is functional. Understand? Right. Now, what is there inside the mammary gland? Inside the mammary gland, here you will have some glandular tissues. Glandular tissue in the sense it produces a fluid substances. A glandular tissue will be there, and it is inside, it is filled with certain connective tissues will be there and some fatty substances will be there inside. Okay, and in the middle part it is having nipple, and the nipple will be surrounded by a pigment layer called areolar pigment. Understand? It's a pigment which is surrounding the central part of the or middle part of the where the nipple is present. Understand? Right. Now, inside this you will have certain lobes like structures present. So there are like this some 2 to around 25 lobes will be present inside. Okay, some 25 lobes will be inside. And each lobe, if you take inside, suppose if this is the lobe and the inner lobe will be lined with a layer of cells, and this layer of cell is called acini or alveoli. Okay, acini or alveoli. Some book gave them alveoli, some book gives acini. And this acini will have the capacity of producing or secretion of milk. Secretion of milk. So where inside this lobes. How many lobes you have? Some 2 to 250 lobes will be there. Inside this lobe, every lobe will have a lining layer of cell inside called acini or alveolar, and that has the capacity of secretion of milk. And this milk is carried by these tubes where it is, this area, and these tubes are called mammary tubes or tubulus. Okay, so once the milk is producing in this secretion, it is taken by the tube called mammary tubes, and this mammary tube will take to this area. The branches are all called tubes. Okay, so this is called the mammary tube, and this area is called the mammary duct. Okay, so this is the mammary duct, and after this it will enter into this kind of a structure. You can find this a lobe like structure is there. Everything will be collected to an area called ampulla. Okay, ampulla where the milk is being collected. And after that it is taken to the central area here by a tube called lactiferous duct. Okay, lactiferous means lactose, taking milk. Okay, then it is opening into the inferior part of the nipple and the milk will be ejaculated out. So these are the routes where you will have this kind of structures. Clear? Right, it is a modified sweat gland, both present in both sexes, male and female. Male it is rudimentary, female it is functional, as glandular cells, tissues will be there, some connective tissue, variable quantity of fat will be present, middle nipple will be there, that is surrounded by the pigment called alveolar. Then inner to this you will have some 2 to 25 lobes will be there, and each lobe will be surrounded by a layer called acini, and the acini will be secreting a kind of milky substances, and that is taken to the tube called mammary tube. From the mammary tube it is taken to the duct, mammary duct, then taken to the ampulla. All these are mammary, and it is taken to the tube called lactiferous tubules or duct, whatever it is, and opened into the nipple. Understand? Now, the normal development of the breast begins at puberty. When the breast development starts at the puberty and progress with changing during every menstrual cycle. Okay, in menstrual cycle it will be changing. Now, in non-pregnant women, the glandular structure is larger, underdeveloped, and the breast size is large due to the amount of fat deposit. One more question: the size of the breast does not have an influence on the efficiency of lactation. That means the size of the breast is because of the accumulation of fat in it. Okay, if the breast is more, the milk secretion is, breast is larger, does not mean that milk secretion is more. The breast is larger only because of the accumulation of fat in it. it will not influence the lactation. The size of the breast will not influence the lactation. Clear? Right. So far in this human reproduction chapter 2, what we have studied is, we have studied menstrual cycle, we have studied gametogenesis, spermatogenesis, structure of sperm, oogenesis and structure of ovum, fertilization, implantation, maintenance of pregnancy. Then we study the male reproductive system, female reproductive system, along with that mammary gland. Understand? So the entire part is over. Maximum we have covered up. When the revision starts, 1 hour to 2 hours, I will be revising overall content to you so that you will able to recall it. Understand? So the next class will be concentrate on the chapter 4, principles of inheritance and variation part. With that, 2 chapters are sufficient for your first 20% portion. Clear? Right. Now we'll go for the, just go through, we'll go for the pre-test. Recap test. Question number 1. Question number 1. Oviduct are also called as dash. Oviduct is also called as dash. There is another name for oviduct. The oviduct is also called as dash. Today I have not told you, but when I thought female reproductive system beginning itself, I have told you oviduct is also called as dash. Question number 2. The main function of fimbriae in the fallopian tube is dash. What is the function of the fimbriae? The main function of fimbriae in the fallopian tube is dash. Question number 3. The main tissue present in the breast is dash. The main tissue which is present in the breast is dash. The main tissue which is present in the breast is dash. 4th question. The mammary duct join to form ampulla. These two join into a duct called dash. The mammary duct join to form this ampulla, and these two join to form a duct called dash. The last question. Skene's gland is homogeneous to the gland which is present in male. Skene's gland, which is homogeneous to the gland which is present in male. Right, we'll check the answer now. Oviduct are also called as fallopian tube. So there is another name for fallopian tube is called oviduct, or otherwise called as fallopian tube or urethral duct. Okay. The second one, the main function of the fimbriae of fallopian tube is to collect the ovum. Okay. The third question is, the main tissue present in the breast is the glandular tissue. Glandular tissue, main tissue. Then the fourth one is mammary duct connect to the ampulla which connected to a tube called lactiferous duct. The last one, Skene's gland is homogeneous to the prostate gland in male. That's all. So next class, highly prepare.